afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of LevelUp Cyber. My name is Tony Bryan, your host, and also the Executive Director of CyberUp. Looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have with Zach Lewis. Zach is the Assistant Vice President and the Chief Information Security Officer over at the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy here in St. Louis, Missouri. Has a great career, a lot of it spent in higher ed, and so excited to really jump into that conversation today, because I think all too often, most of us really look at large corporations and the government as really our kind of cybersecurity roles, but there is a whole world of opportunities that exist for, different types of organizations, to include higher education, and each of them come with their own risks and challenges. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So excited to have Zach join us. So Zach, I've had the pleasure of getting to know you the last several years. I'd love you to just take a second, introduce yourself to the group and our listeners, and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Tony. So again, Zach Lewis, Assistant Vice President of IT and CISO for the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy. The University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy, we're a university educating students for over 158 years now, I think, is what we're at. We kind of lay that foundation for graduate and professional study in various health professions and careers for people. I've been here at the university for about 8 years now. 4 years, I was here in a number of different roles, from a client systems engineer, where I was building images and testing software and putting them onto devices for students, faculty, and staff. Transitioned into a sysadmin, network admin, then became a manager of the help desk for a while. At that point, I left, went to a different higher education institution for a short stint, and then the university wanted me to come back. So that's pretty good when your previous employers want you to come back. So I did, and kind of took over IT, running things as their CIO, and then we needed someone to do security, so started taking some courses, training myself up, became a CISO there, and have been doing that for another 4 years. Prior to the higher ed space, I worked in tech startups, enterprise level organizations, sort of like Arch Coal, which is one of the biggest producers of coal manufacturing in the United States. Did some time in like co-location facilities, which store hardware, servers, switches, equipment, racks for different companies, and worked there for a while. So a number of different industries, gained a lot of different experience.
So the one thing that just stuck out to me in kind of your intro is, and even just your title that we can see on the screen, is that you're really just said you're responsible for both the full spectrum of IT and the full spectrum of security, right? Which I think is indicative oftentimes for higher education organizations, right? Where there's a large cost when you would have a CIO and a CISO and maybe a CTO, and that kind of corporate structure where colleges don't have that flexibility or maybe budget to do that. So how much different do you suppose like your kind of job looks like, having all those aspects instead of just kind of having the one singular focus? Like, is that a challenge you embrace, or something that what's your approach towards that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some days it's really good because I don't have to go to battle as a CISO or a CIO against the CISO or the CIO. We're kind of unified, and whatever I kind of say goes. so that helps in a lot of ways. But it's a lot of extra work. If you want to really dumb it down, I think looking at the I know some people are very familiar with the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, availability. The CISO very interested in confidentiality and integrity. The CIO very interested in keeping availability as their top of mind. Now I have to kind of unify those three and balance things out. So at least I get to layer in security on top of pretty much all the projects we do. The team knows that that's a big focus. And then in higher ed, I think a lot of places are just now, a lot of higher education institutions are just now starting to get CISOs. Some of the middle range higher education institutions anyway are venturing into security. It's a very, very highly targeted industry. So that's important that they start exploring those security processes and getting them in place. But we'll get a lot of other stuff thrown at us too. So, we talked a little bit before the show. I have various things like the library are reporting to me. I have academic technology, classroom technology. So how do we teach? How do we build a learning management system where faculty can get in and structure courses and present that to students? So it's not just IT, the networking, the help desk sort of stuff. There's many types of layers in there. It makes it a lot of fun.
I always think of Shrek when I hear of layers. So, there's lots of layers to this scenario here, which means that not every day is the same, and probably, adds a variety is the spice of life in this, and, adds some excitement for your team. I really appreciate the idea of incorporating security, having both hats on as you're looking at your LMS platforms or any type of tools or IoT devices, right? Those have had a huge surge in teaching education over the last several years with smart boards and all the interconnective opportunities. I know big touring like Maryville University, they've got a pretty elaborate partnership with Apple, that with your iPads and things, it's basically tracking you on campus and showing you where you're at. So when you walk into a building, it like pops up the screen, welcome, Zach, thanks for coming in today, or, reminders of stuff, which is crazy, but the amount of risks that come along with that, is also alarming, right? And how do you do that? So that's a great segue into kind of that next question of like, you just mentioned that, universities and colleges are good targets, but what are some of the challenges that you have, within a school leading in that way for you to work within those constraints of higher education?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few layers. I keep mentioning layers. That'll be the theme of this talk. But we have high turnover of students, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't retain students. But every year you have several hundred students graduate and several hundred students come back in. So we're constantly churning in new people with new PII, new data that we're having to store and manage for a number of years. We have turnover of professors and adjunct professors, so we have that data. There's the I'll call it the campus culture, right? And I think campus culture or university culture is very prone to sort of open and free flowing streams of information. So they're a little less disciplined about adhering to security protocols, and we kind of have to address that. We have research. We have a lot of use of personal tech. I'll jumping back to research for a second. I mean, we are a health sciences institution, so a lot of our research is around vaccines, medicines, different sorts of trials of drugs and things like that. But some of our counterparts, even in the St. Louis area, may be doing research in other areas, and whether that might be military applications or new technology. Still, research that we have to protect because there's a lot of other threat actors and nation states that are very interested in that sort of thing right now. In the university space, I want to say in the first half of 2023, higher ed or education in general was the most targeted vector. That dropped down a little bit in the last half of the year, but if you look at the numbers, I think some recent reports said like 74% of attacks on universities proved successful, which is not good. And then they have one of the slowest recovery times after they've been hit, with over like 40% taking over a month to recover after they've been hit or compromised by ransomware. So those are difficult numbers to have to worry about and take care about with a limited budget.
That's insane. Hearing you say it out loud is kind of crazy. And I'm thinking of just, we rewind back to March of 2020 when we all kind of watched COVID happen, right? And, companies were then trying to reimagine these work from home policies and bring your own devices and connecting to networks and things like that. You guys have been doing that way before COVID. You know what I mean? I think of colleges and universities. You've had BYOD devices and Internet of Things kind of, I'm sure, policies in place. How has that really been? How was that a shift for you guys during that time, or did you feel pretty solid with that transition?
We had to flip a lot of toggles when COVID hit. We had some remote work. We had some very limited sort of remote learning for students at that time. Being health sciences, there's a lot of lab work. There's a lot of mixing of chemicals and testing drugs. So a lot of that stuff you have to be on site for. So we hadn't fully explored how to do that remotely yet. COVID forced that to sort of happen. So we built that out over a span of a couple weeks and made things fully remote. I think with higher ed, again, I'll mention the less disciplined and free-flowing stream of information, which has always been the case. With COVID, people were going home and they were accessing that data and pulling that data out. And I think a lot of higher education institutions opened those floodgates, opened those doors so people could get to it easier. And that's probably what's led to a large increase in attacks, that and limited budgets and a lot of sensitive data setting out there. But all that mixed together makes a good melting pot of catastrophe, really.
Yeah, that's crazy. So there you have students, and I think of just all the different areas of people you're serving on campus. You've got the professors, you've got the students, you have the support staff, right? There's lots of different risks there. What are some of the inherent risks with students that coming in, connecting Xboxes, PCs, laptops, all that stuff? What are some of your concerns, or what are the risks that are being provided by your students of walking them on campus?
Yeah, I mean, for a number of years, we offered a laptop program for students. We'll call it a one-to-one program. So when students came to campus, we actually gave them a laptop, provisioned, managed by us. We were able to secure that with an EDR, and we patched them, and they had all the technology and software they needed for classes. This year is one of our first full years where we aren't doing that. We're letting them kind of bring their own devices fully. They've always been allowed to bring their own devices, but for classwork specifically, they can kind of do whatever they want now. We've always had Xboxes and PlayStations and everything on campus, and there's been a lot of network segmentation happening there about how different devices can get on and what they can access, and really just structuring that to make sure things are isolated from each other and not talking to sort of the production network. But then you have the advent now of Alexas and Google Homes, and I know some of our other higher ed institutions in St. Louis, have even partnered, and they're putting Alexas in dorms. So in the higher education space, that's a real consideration. Think about that amount of data and information they're ingesting and sharing out, and you kind of have to manage that in a reasonable expectations, because the more security you layer on, the less functionality you may have in some of these products, and we don't want to make things non-functional. So you just try to let them use things in a safe way, I guess, or the safest way you can. I think that's the same sort of situation we're running into right now with artificial intelligence or AI for ChatGPT. We're a college campus, so obviously people are using it, whether all the faculty believe it or not. You can definitely see where students are accessing it and using it, and we're not blocking it. We're just trying to set expectations that, hey, don't use it to write your papers. It is a tool. Don't put sensitive information in there, sending that to faculty and staff as well, and our researchers for that matter. Nothing sensitive. Use it to look things up. Just a tool, and we're rolling.
How's that going so far? I mean, I know that it is a little bit of wild west. I've talked to my daughter who's in school a couple times, and how her professors have kind of encouraged them to use AI and tools, right? Like what do you think is the future of kind of higher education, or heck, even K-12 education, right? As this just continues to become the norm, and I feel like AI is being incorporated into every single email platform, service, app you're using, right? It's really kind of becoming the fabric. How does higher education continue to evolve, and how do you protect against inherent risks that come along with it?
Yeah, man. I like to think of it, at least on the student side, as, and this is a very simplistic, viewpoint of it, but at one point calculators were the newest technology, right? And people were like, man, we can't use calculators. Kids can't use math. They won't be able to do math. They're not going to be able to figure things out on their own. And it's like now they walk around with a calculator in their back pocket, or they can Google anything they want to look up in 5 seconds. So that math in their head need isn't so much there. So maybe at some point, with AI being in their pocket or on their computer, will the need to be able to structure a really well written essay on a book or something be that viable. I think being able to read well and write well is important in business. I mean, I have to write reports all the time, but I don't know, can AI help me write a better report? I think that's something we're exploring right now and seeing what can happen. I know some people are using AI to help write grant funding requests, which is pretty big. And honestly a giant time saver in some regards. But I think that continues to grow. I think we've seen the use for AI in research to be really big, where it can find new elements, new ways for battery charging, new drugs and different things, and it can parse through that data very quickly. So we're just on the forefront of that. I think it's going to have some really good ramifications in the future.
All the things you just described, grant writing, AI is a great tool. I think simply making something better, right? I know I don't use a lot of superfluous words, and I find that for ChatGPT, they love their adjectives. So it's pretty easy to pick out what would be ChatGPT versus not.
Yeah. Like a freshman, right? Just like an eighth grader. Don't use big words, please.
I always write and speak at probably a fifth or sixth grade level, 99% of the time. One, because that's just how smart I am as a person, and two, I find that the average people, like, it's just for a normal person, that just people want to talk normal and not use unnecessary words for those things. So, there's ideas. There's private and public schools. Do you find that there are different challenges and risk that come along with private and public schools, and like I would guess probably rules and regulations, right? Where maybe if you're a public school, you're mandated to state regulations and things like that. How does that dynamic work for public and private colleges?
Yeah, there's definitely different laws in place, different laws around where you get your funding from, and if you get funding from certain government entities or people, you have to make that known or follow certain restrictions. It's a balancing act. Like a lot of it's the same old stuff. There's giant regulations that encompass all of them. Like I'll throw out FERPA, which protects student information, whether it's grades or their addresses or their names or identification numbers, different things like that we'll all have to play into. But each state has their own different laws around where you get funding from and what kind of students you can pull in and how you do down to how do you request software. So being at a private institute now, I can be like, hey, I want this new piece of technology. I don't need to compare anybody else. I don't need to create a request for proposal, document or anything like that. I can just purchase it and use it, which is kind of cool. I don't do that. I like to compare things, but still, you can do that now. I've been in public institutions where we have to have giant RFP process. I can only write down what I want, and then another department takes over, and they put that out for bid, and all these companies come back with their product, and we all have to talk together. I can't share information with any of them individually. If a question is asked, everyone has to get asked about it, and they all provide their answers, and then you pick the best one. So it's a very separation sort of duty process, and it can be tedious. It can be very tedious to get something done and then implement it and set up. So for that reason, I really like the private sector, I think, a lot more.
For sure. I mean, and I've always kind of heard that around school, state type of programs, especially for the RFP process of just trying to even get some new technology. I'm sure it has to be a logistical nightmare to get approval of what that would look like. Shifting gears just a little bit, so because I know you've been involved in InfraGard for quite some time. I'm a fan of InfraGard, and I think it's an effort across the country that I think it's oftentimes it gets overlooked, especially for folks trying to break into this stuff or really trying to make some chapters. Now, St. Louis has had an interesting InfraGard over the last couple of years. We've had a lot of different SACs that have transitions and turnovers, and with that, so there has been. But we've had great leadership like yours and David Wren here locally in St. Louis. So, I'd love to just dive in a little bit around, why you're involved with InfraGard, why you think it's such an important part, and why you would encourage maybe other people to look at InfraGard as a great way to network and get out there and meet people, right, and learn new skills.
Oh man, that's a great promotion right there. So for those who aren't aware, InfraGard is a national organization that partners with the public sector like FBI, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and different entities like that to help secure our critical infrastructure. So there's 16 different sectors of critical infrastructure, from electricity and public water, dams, energy, manufacturing, different things like that. So I've been with InfraGard now for maybe 4 or 5 years. I serve right now as the local St. Louis chapter's a board member and an officer. What we do, we meet probably every month. The board does with representatives from CISA and the FBI. Just talk about different things that are going on in the cybersecurity world or the protection of different, like I said, those critical infrastructure pieces. We try to get speakers and presentations and have conferences and lunch and learns and different things to educate the community about what we're seeing. St. Louis is probably the third or fourth largest sector of InfraGard in the country. We are one of the only ones who do a conference every year, and I'll just make a quick plug for State of Cyber, which it happens in March usually. I want to say it's the 13th this year, but we have a pretty big.
March. Yeah. It'll be the day. It'll be tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Perfect. It is tomorrow. That's right. So for those who are watching this today and you still want to go, well, there are some tickets available out there. You can go to Eventbrite and find us. If you need a code and you're just seeing this, message me on LinkedIn and I'll get you a promo code. But we have I think we have about 300 attendees coming. We got 20 vendors. We got speakers from the very top of CISA coming in to talk about strategy. FBI is talking about taking down different ransomware groups like Quackbot. So a lot of good presentations. I think there's going to be a lot of great sponsors are going to be there, and look forward each March. And we do it in March because that's sort of when the latest stats and figures come out from the FBI and CISA on what security looked like in the previous year. So they can kind of report on those trends that they've been seeing, and we can get the latest information.
And so it's also, I'll drop the link in the comments for this. So if somebody wants to look when we're going, so you can take it out. But it is March 13th, 8 to 4. It's out of the Charles F. Knight Executive Education Center out of WashU. If you haven't been, it's a beautiful facility. It's probably one of my favorites in the area. They've always do a bang up job. And it is, to Zach's point, a really great event. And what are requirements? Because I know there's some background checks and things around InfraGard, just so people would be aware of, or what would be the process if they would want to, maybe explore joining.
Yeah, so there will be a background check on there. There is a site, InfraGard or .org, I think, off the top of my head. You put me on the spot trying to pull those up, but you can find it pretty easily by looking it up. Registration might be closed right now. I expect it should be opening at any time, and then people can start applying again. We'll have a table at the State of Cyber conference. You can also ping me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to get you some information over about that. I know the process takes a few months for the background check and qualifications get verified, and then you get access to the portal. We send out bulletins. InfraGard National sends out bulletins. Just a bunch of updates of what's going on in the security industry.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I figure the background check's always one that in case somebody wanted to know that information. And it's like a public trust, so it's nothing. You're not doing a top secret or anything like that. It really is just a, do you have a criminal background? Are you safe to come hang out? It's not, diving into your deepest darkest.
You're not some black hat hacker who's been in prison. I think they'll probably let you in, and then you'll get some not top secret information, but some cool members only information. There are no dues, and we have a lot of events that go on. So it's a good organization to get involved and meet some really cool people. And you mentioned David Wren earlier. He's our ex officio president. He still sits on the board, but he's been leading InfraGard, for like 6 years. So he did a really fantastic job.
It's been one that I've enjoyed. I think it's a great way. One, I think the information you're getting from the federal government and FBI, because they're also helpful. And I think even just understanding, I don't know about you, but I know for me, I'm used to watching movies and people bebop booping and, finding out information of hackers in 35 seconds. In reality, it doesn't work that way. So it is really interesting to see how things work in the real world and not, on Mission Impossible or Jack Reacher, right? Where they're just finding things out in 4.5 seconds.
That's right. I think that also a good point there to mention is whether you're involved with InfraGard or not. If you're a cybersecurity leader or an IT leader or anyone kind of in that space, you should definitely reach out and meet your, local FBI representative. for the St. Louis area, meet your CISA representative, get a contact established, make a connection, even if it's just over email or a phone call. You want to have a name, you want to have a contact, let them know who you are. So if anything does happen, you have that contact ready and you can reach out and you can start getting help if you need it. I think that speaks volumes to what they're willing to do and help with, and just make a connection.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking specifically St. Louis InfraGard, but there are InfraGard chapters in most major cities. If you go, I confirmed it was infragard.org. It'll take you to chapters, and each chapter has its own site that you can look up and find the membership. So all of them are similar things. To Zach's point, that St. Louis happens to be a bigger one. But our InfraGard also works really, really well with the State Highway Patrol, local law enforcement, CISA. We seem to have a really good kind of collaborative effort here in our market. I can't speak to everybody else's, but I would assume they're probably similar. What advice would you give to kind of folks, that would, be seeking out alternative places other than your large corporations to look, to me, what you do on a daily basis would be attractive to me. I like the change of pace and learning multiple things. For me, I think that would be a thriving environment. Not everybody would. What would be a call to action to look outside some of those things and maybe look at, at organizations like colleges or universities as opportunities for careers?
Yeah, I think for education, and specifically, I'll throw out like K through 12 education, because there's a big need there. I think a big need also in like small local governments and stuff. Areas like that, industries like that, they don't have a lot of budget for security, and they're not going to be able to staff someone who is I guess you could try to hire a CISO. I don't think they're going to have a CISO, and if they have one, they're probably not going to have a security team to back it up. So a chief without any reports, I guess, is not a chief. So they probably don't have the budget for a security team. So they need help, right? I think a call, if you're someone who's entrepreneurial in some way and you want to help, you're reaching out to them and being like, hey, let me help you out. Here's a great deal. Get in there, get some experience, give them some best practices, help them set up some stuff. Those people need the most help. They're the most targeted. If you're talking about just general education, like higher ed, which sometimes has more money than definitely the K through 12s, if there's a job and you get hired and you're in, I think the most useful thing, and I'm going to use that word specifically because the most useful you can be is by being useful. And when you get in there, find things to do, find things to help out, pick up tasks. One of the things I've always done, and I tell some of my people to do, is if you're in a meeting and someone's like, hey, I need someone to run this or someone to do this project or whatever, even if it's outside your wheelhouse, people don't usually shoot up their hand to volunteer to do stuff because they're always so busy. Try it out, do it, raise your hand and do those tasks, because you have to then start thinking outside your box a little bit, and that opens up new, pathways, whatever, in your head about how to think of things. You solve new problems, you work in a new area, you get a new understanding of how things kind of function over there, and that can sometimes pay dividends back to your normal job. So always taking on new things and being that useful person that they don't want to get rid of. They want to throw more stuff to, because you're good at it. You like doing it. You get things done, and that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, I'm going to assume there's, a lot of use of vendors and partners and kind of technology platforms where, for a lot of times for your larger corporations, you might do that stuff in-house, right? And so, yes, that gives you some additional opportunities for a job or some skills, but there's also opportunities to learn how to navigate the vendor relationships and how you would outsource that and work with those teams. And, there's a lot of pros, I think, that come along with that. And even just learning, you learn so many other aspects of the business through others by supporting them in those things, where I think it gives you a strong sense of direction where you want to go with your career, or should give you good, has the ability. Or maybe like yourself, you really like the space and it naturally fits your kind of personality and you stay within the sector and industry, right? There's positive things.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, the original job I was hired for at this university was around a product Microsoft had called SCCM, which manages computers and pushes software and pushes updates and stuff like that. That was like my bread and butter. I was really good at that. And we don't even have that anymore here. I sunsetted it like years ago. New products come out, things change, and your job description is going to change, and the things you do change. So don't hold on to something so tight, because the world just changes so fast in technology now that stuff's not even might not even be relevant in a couple of years. So
I think just online learning, COVID changed so much with portals and learning, that I imagine your world got flipped upside down in that going to remote, and just, the advancements in online learning probably went so far, right? The labs and all the things where there was a lot of advanced technology. So everybody gets the same last question. If you, again, 30 minutes goes way faster than you ever think it would be. So what advice would you give to those that are looking to level up their cybersecurity career?
Level up. I'll go back to what I said earlier. Be useful. I think that's a very important piece. So it's not just about passion in our industry. It's not just about being good at something or wanting a job in cyber because it's cool. I think if you want to level up and you want to be be good at your job and have value to your company and be appreciated, I think you should just be useful, and be useful in a good customer service sort of way. You don't want to be useful and be a jerk, because no one likes that. But someone people can rely on and come to and get their problems fixed.
That's good life advice in general.
Yeah.
It also applies to the cyber stuff, but I definitely just, good life advice of be a good person. It's really not that complicated. So, Zach, I appreciate the time today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the InfraGard State of Cyber event. I've been looking forward to it for a couple of weeks. And I encourage everybody the same as every week. Zach is a great guy. If you want to reach out to, I encourage you to reach out to him on LinkedIn, have a connect. Don't hit him up for spam and try to sell him things, right? But if you have advice or kind of questions you want to learn about things or interested in it, Zach's a good dude and he's going to answer, give you some time and opportunities to answer, right? Those questions if you haven't. Thank you so much for joining us today, Zach. Appreciate it. Just the insights and just the background and support over the years. So, and for everybody for listening, thanks for tuning in. Until we gather next time, see you soon.
Thanks.